Good afternoon, good day, and welcome to Mental Health and You. I'm your host, Cynthia Timms, and I thank you so much for being I'm your host, Cynthia Timms, again, coming from my studio, which has been my refuge and also a place of isolation during this time of covert. But I'm so grateful for the Bronxnet staff, and I'm grateful also for my guest today for agreeing to be a part of this great experiment in remote. My guest, Miss Irma. Miss Irma Quitcon is you all know her. She's been on the show before. She's almost becoming a veteran. She's a retired clinical social worker, and her granddaughter, Solena. Can you just say your last name? I don't want to mess it up, Solena.
Beauvais.
Beauvais, Solena Beauvais, who is a college student. And we thought, considering the times that we're living in, considering that our world has been turned upside down and sideways over the past 3 months, and particularly so now that we are living in the pandemic, within the pandemic, let's talk about this. Let's talk about race. Let's talk about protest, America on the brink. And you two ladies are going to help me.
Absolutely.
Yes. So, I was reading a quote recently from Angela Davis, the activist Angela Davis, who said that I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I'm changing the things I cannot accept.
Okay.
When I think about that, when I think about the Black Lives Movement, the Black Lives Matter, because this is a continuation. Irma, we both grew up in the movement.
Absolutely.
It seems to me that we're seeing a new day. We're seeing something new. We're seeing the moment. We're seeing the movement on social media now.
Absolutely.
We're seeing the movement on CNN and MSNBC and other cable outlets.
The revolution televised.
The revolution. And I wanted your two ladies' perspective because this is an intergenerational conversation.
Absolutely.
So what's your feelings as a retired social worker and having a history of dealing and advocating for those of us living on the margins?
Yes.
What's some of your feelings about this?
Yeah, I have very, very deep feelings about this. I think that this has become the conversation we've all been expecting to have, and it was forced upon us, as you say, a pandemic within a pandemic. Since our emancipation in 1865, it took 100 years for us to have our civil rights movement. And here we are, 2020, and a health pandemic, a global health pandemic has brought to the forefront, people's issues that can no longer be swept under the rug. We have to talk to our young people, and they took the baton on because they understand, they live, they refuse to accept what's going on, in the world today, where systemic racism is depriving our communities, particularly African American, the Afro-Latina, which we're a part of, as a people, to really be able to address these very complicated, issues that can.
Now, Ms. Irma, when you say systemic racism, what are we talking about? We know what it is, but those who may not know, what are we talking about?
We're talking about a system that denies basic rights and services of health, economy, every service that the system, that a society has put together. Here we are in the foremost country of the world, the United States of America, where Black people are still enslaved. I mean, we are really enslaved. We're at the bottom of the rung, systemic racism denies us all basic rights every which way, to where when you look at it, disproportionately, our communities are the ones suffering more than all the other communities. And it's been that way since 400 years ago when they began this slave trade. It seems like we're still fighting the same fight, and
Wow.
we're in a situation where now our youth are refusing. And I want to let Zoe
Yes.
bring in,
And I want to
Zoe,
bring Solely about that. I want to ask you, Solely, when you see this now, in light of everything, George Floyd, he was killed at the hands of a police officer I should say on the knee of a police officer, May 25th. But this been happening for years. This is just, as your grandmother said, the revolution is being televised now. It so happened a young student like yourself, 17 years old, she was there. 18. She was there videotaping it. So when you see things like this, I mean, what hope or what do you think? What goes through your mind as you see your generation dealing with, and you as a young college student?
I feel like in the past, the things that would happen with racism and police brutality, it was easy to sweep it under the rug because people didn't have the access to technology and social media the way they did before. And now that it's no longer a source stating what's happening and it's getting filtered through many people, you're getting direct videotape of exactly what's happening. And although it's graphic, you're meant to see it because it is gruesome what you're seeing, and you need to know what's going on, and I feel like that lights a fire within all of us in our generation. And it's no longer, we grew up hearing stories of our grandparents and great grandparents and the things that they had to go through regarding racism in our society. And then now the racism didn't go away, although many like to make it seem like it's gone. All it did was go change names. Now it went from slavery and shackles and picking cotton to the over marginalized prison system and Black men being incarcerated at bigger rates than any other race, for crimes that are minute, other things, the injustice within our law system. And I feel like now more than ever in our generation, specifically me, I feel like it's my duty to carry that baton and pass it on and vote, and voting very important, and to educate my other fellow cohorts, people in my age, about what's going on.
And what's the conversation? You're a college student. What's that like when you're in school, whether I guess online these days? What is that like? I mean, that conversation.
It's particularly draining emotionally because I grew up in the age where social media was just coming up. So from the minute I was born in 2001, Twitter and the Facebook and all that, I grew up with that, and now on social media, I'm seeing people that look just like me, like my brothers, like my fathers, like my aunts and uncles getting hurt. And it's although it's so important to educate yourself, I also feel like it's important to, as Black people, to take a step back and to understand and to process our emotions and to feel our own, take care of our own mental health before, because you can't heal the world if you can't heal yourself.
Absolutely.
I feel like it isn't being had. A lot of my friends and friends of friends, we understand what's going on and people are protesting and fighting against the cause, but it's also important to take care of yourself because you can't take care of anyone else if you're not good, So it's time.
And we talk about that. We talk about that on this show, Solena, about how we can take care of ourselves. Yes. Because when we're fighting, I mean, oh my goodness. Another quote from one of my heroes, Angela Davis, when she talked about the struggle is constant. I'm paraphrasing, but the struggle for freedom is constant. So in the midst of all that struggle, we're seeing George Floyd in Minnesota. We're seeing Breonna Taylor in Kentucky. We're seeing the young man jogging while Black in Georgia.
Yeah, Ahmaud.
But even before that, what's just happened in Atlanta the other night?
Yeah, lynchings being said to be suicide.
Hello, yes, absolutely. So, but
it's all coming out of the woodwork now.
oh
All of
yes,
it was hidden, and now it's
so
coming.
it's not. It hasn't really ever stopped, Irma.
No longer hide the evidence. I mean, it's right in our face. We saw George Floyd breathe his last breath. We saw Eric breathe his last breath.
Eric Gardner in
We
Staten
can't
Island.
continue to allow this, lynching to go on in front of us.
And this is not an issue of Black people versus white people. This is an issue of human rights. This is an issue of right versus wrong. And I feel like people are starting to recognize that it's not meant to separate us. It's just recognizing that as Black people, minorities, Black, brown, we are at the bottom of the food chain here, and we're getting treated like less than human. You know what I mean? And after all of these years, still fighting for basic human rights. And
basic human rights.
Yes, and we're finally recognizing that we have the power as people. As people, we aren't actually minorities. It's just made to make us feel small. There are a lot of us, and although it seems like one person and one vote and one action may not make a cause, you can see with these protests, when we all come together as people, as the human race, to fight against a cause that's injustice and being treated as less than, we can make a change. And that's what our generation is being fueled against, because we have that fire within us that we know that when we come together, we are strong. We're a force to be reckoned with,
Absolutely.
So, like, although what I see on social media is disheartening and it's hard to watch, I take that, I process it, and I take a step back, and I realize that it's my duty as the next generation for my little brothers and the children that I'll have in far future that I take the steps for a better day for them tomorrow and for the future. So
as we we're going to take a break soon. We're going to take a little pause for the cause.
Yes.
But when we come back, let's talk about those steps. Let's talk about what Black Lives Matter means to you. And why should we even have to say that after all these years?
Absolutely.
And since we've been here in this country since 1619.
Right.
And
we were here before,
you would think
we were here.
Our lives, we wouldn't have to say that. You would think that, yes, but this is not for us. We know our lives matter. Sometimes I think we know our lives matter.
Yes. Well,
but we're talking about others.
Yeah.
We're talking about, this is not a conversation for us, but for them. Absolutely. But I know, Irma, you're like, you want to go, but we're going to take a break.
Okay.
We're going to take a break for a pause for the cause, and we're going to get back into this conversation. Welcome back to Mental Health and You. Oh my goodness, we're in the midst of a wonderful and a dynamic and a lively discussion with Miss Irma Quitcon, retired clinical social worker, and her daughter, Solena, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Granddaughter, my bad. Granddaughter, Solena. And we're talking about on this episode, race, protests, and America on the brink. And when we left off, Smith Irma, we were talking about, this idea that we still, after all these years, got to sort of like validate our humanity, see others, and it's like, it's physically and mentally exhausting.
Exactly. The wonderful thing that we've gotten out of this is an open conversation, one that was lacking. Up until the moment, we had to see in front of us all the ills of what has been going on. There is undeniably, there's always been that denial, but now with media and young people unrelentingly using this as, instead of having guns and weapons, we're using the reality that exists in this world.
I want to pick up on something. There's always been that, and who's been denying? Now we as a people, we've been knowing this going on.
Yeah, we've been the victims. We've been victimized. Victimization of our community has never stopped. It has been unrelenting, and now we have said, and our youth, those coming up, these millennials are saying, No.
Generation Z, actually.
And Generation Z is saying, no, we're not going to accept anymore. So they are standing on our shoulders. And we are launching this next generation to be strong and verbal and healthy and understand that they are integral. There is no way that we are saying you don't have, you have to step back and allow this to continue. No, they're refusing to continue to accept the assault on our community.
Mm-hmm.
So be that as it may, I want to pick up on that, Ms. Solena. We talked about protests. We talked about this conversation. The what it looks like, and let's talk about the anatomy of the protest, of the resistance. That's just the marching. Yes, that's a form of protest.
Mm-hmm.
That's a form of resistance, of getting it, having your issues put into the spotlight is so important. Going back to 1955 with the Montgomery bus boycott, how Black folks in Alabama stayed off the Montgomery bus system for over a year until they were treated as human. They got an opportunity, their human rights to sit wherever they want. So be that as it may, be that as a guide. Come all these years later, Solena, what is it that your generation hope to accomplish?
I can speak for myself.
Yes, what is it that you hope to?
Now it's about posting petitions to sign, because not everyone can be there physically in the protest, but since we have social media, people are signing petitions, people are educating their friends, and the people, I feel like a lot of it is it's ignorance. You know what I mean? The racism comes from ignorance. So we're educating the people who may not know why we're facing these issues. Instead of just saying you're a racist and screaming at them, it's where is this coming from? You know what I mean? Seeing, starts having conversations about things, gathering your friends together. And I'm registered to vote, and I'm encouraging all my friends to register to vote, and we can go together to the voting booths and seek change. And I feel like we're all playing a role into the bigger picture of making this world a better place. Where my generation, it's no longer separation of Black Lives Matter, and then we want to push away the trans and the gays. It's everybody together. You know what I mean? Black lives, Black trans lives matter. You know what I mean? Black gay rights matter. It's Black women's rights matter. It's not just that the children in ICE getting locked up in cages. We're all fighting for all of these causes together because we have power as a community, as the new generation to positively seek change in the world as we see it, And I feel like people are realizing that it's no longer you're just fighting for your issue, or just as a Black woman, I'm just fighting for the Black Lives Matter, fighting for that, but I'm fighting for all causes of injustice. You know what I mean? Like injustice within the Middle East and Palestine and the famine that they're facing, just injustice in the Latin American community. As a Puerto Rican and Haitian American, I'm seeing all these issues. And I feel like a lot of this has to do with, on my generation, there's a lot more people who are mixed, you know what I mean? Coming from different households and really seeing why is there a separation? We all are human beings, like we should appreciate each other's cultures, and it's no longer our differences separate us, but we appreciate the differences that other people have, and we come together as a group to seek change. So that's what I think.
That's amazing, because you talked about this, how everybody is coming together, all these, the causes, but this is going worldwide.
Yes, this is worldwide. It's televised.
This is going, I'm seeing people all over Europe, all over Central America, yelling, talking and saying Black Lives Matter. Saying Black Lives Matter.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We are all interconnected. We're recognizing that, Black, white, those are divisions that should not exist, because we're all human and we're all related to each other. There is no difference. The dermis does not define our species. Our species is not defined by the dermis. That was a political ploy.
To separate, to divide and conquer. Yeah.
And so we're in a situation now where the youth are much more open-minded. They're aware of human rights, of the right of to be whole within this world as a species, and that we also have to take care of the animal species. They belong here on Earth too. We all are sharing. This doesn't have, there's no ownership of this. It's about us all living whole lives and not using some arbitrary notion of dermis, of our skin color to define who we are as humans.
Yeah, and in no way, shape, or form are we saying that we don't want to recognize each other's differences. It's just you recognize that you have differences in culture, differences in the way you live, but it's accepting that those differences don't make you a bad person. It's just you should appreciate the culture and what they have to add to the collective, the human race. You know what I mean? And you respect the cultures that other people have. You respect them. You educate yourself, and then I think that is education and just about other people and the lives that they have, and realizing that it's not just your little community, but the world is a all together. You know what I mean? And having more of a worldly view of things. And social media is really taking part in that, because until recently, in the past, I would say in the past like 20, 30 years, it's no longer you see the world as your little community, but you see it as everything that's going on. You can communicate with people from different countries and continents and things like that. And it helps broaden the way that we see things. And especially in my generation.
Well, xenophobia, it's like a fear of everything different. And that is counteracted by cultural competence. And I think that the more we educate ourselves and expose ourselves, and that's what these tools of media, of being able to chat like we're doing right now, this brings us more to cultural competence, intergenerational competence. We give the next generation that strength, that foundation, so that they know that this is where you come from. You're launching from us, and it's your turn now to be in the main stage.
This is where you come from, Miss Irma. I want to talk about that, because we talked about the systemic racism. Yes, it's one thing to be on social media and protesting, but but be within the system. How do we teach? How do we get this history? How do we get this appreciation? How do we get the respect within the system? Solena, you talked about, if I can share, you wanted to be a nurse. And being a part of that system, you want to be a nurse so you can help make a difference.
Yeah.
So you're educating. You're educating, because yes, Blacks, nursing, we've been nurses for so long. We've been teaching. But what about the police department too?
Well,
how is that? How can we know? But you're playing a wonderful part. You're going to be in that. You're going to be a nurse. Somebody else is going to be a teacher. But that in-grade thing that's embedded within the healthcare system.
Yes, but
that's what I'm trying to get to. How do we fight that? Because it's one thing to be in this. Yes, you're going to be in the system, but how are we going to fight that more?
Well, I feel like by more of us having these jobs and taking on these roles of, the lawyers and the judges and the nurses and the teachers, we are able to show our perspective to the people that are around us. If we're not taking those jobs, we're not going to be represented there.
Right.
In politics, how many of people that look like us are represented in politics? We can't expect our voice to be heard if there's no people who look like us to know what it's like to represent us the proper way, And I choose to do things like I work with aftercare with pre-K through 3rd grade and young girls that look. I choose to wear my hair in these Afrocentric styles and to be unapologetically myself. And it's not unprofessional and it's not unladylike and it's not unkept, but to show them that it's okay to be who you are. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with being who you are, and that it's not a matter of feeling like you have to worry about the world accepting you, but you have to unapologetically be yourself, because that's what's important, your integrity and being true to yourself, And I feel like that's my role as a soon-to-be nurse and a representative of my generation to do that for myself. So.
Well, I wish you all the best. And when you make that, you got to come back and tell us what's that experience like. Like your grandmother was in social service as a social worker. being into the system, being a part of the system.
I really appreciate the role that she played in my life. Being only 18 really helped me think about things differently. And, and you could see how educated my grandma is, being a Columbia University graduate. You know what I mean? She passed that baton of, now it's no longer we're fighting for just getting in the door, but we're going to get in the door and we're going to be one of the best of the best. And I have to thank her for that. So.
Well, I'm sure you will. Now, in our last 2 minutes, as we start to wind down, each of us, tell me about what Black lives mean to you. What is it going forth? What is it? What does Black lives mean to you?
Black lives to me encompass all lives, because we're not in a black-white situation. We're all human. And I've equated Black, anytime I hear Black, I hear human, and we've been dehumanized for so long.
We've been dehumanized. They haven't been dehumanized.
Well, together, because when they assault us, they're dehumanizing themselves.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
That's my sense of their dehumanization, as when we say Black and white, when you're talking Black, white. But when you ask me what is Black Lives Matter, it's our human life, reclaiming that and saying we matter, and what happens to us and what is allowed to happen to us affects your generation of children who are now lost, because these white children don't want to see that perpetuation going on. The new generation does not agree with that.
Yeah.
And, it was our work as activists from the 60s on, when the hip began.
I see right now, as we start to come to a close, I see right now we're going to have the conversation.
White and Black holding hands together to solve the problem of all of us. So,
well, thank you so much.
Yes,
thank you. Absolutely. As we've come to a conclusion of Mental Health and You, ladies, both of you, I want to thank you so much for being a part of this experiment.
Absolutely.
And I want to thank so much on Bronxnet for making it possible. And I invite you back on so we can pass some more when we're back in the studio.
Absolutely.
And because this is a continuing conversation. Absolutely. This is a continuing conversation. But until that time, I want to thank everyone. I want to thank everyone for being a part of Mental Health and You. I want to thank Bronxnet. I want to thank my guests. And I want to urge you to take care of yourself in the midst. Never forget who you are. Absolutely. You're beautiful. You're not nothing. Your Black lives mean something.
Absolutely.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
So until next time.